The Krell had conquered 47 species before they reached Earth. Their method was refined, almost surgical in its efficiency. Identify the species, assess their military capability, deploy neural compliance collars, and integrate them into the Empire's labor force. Simple, effective, undefeated. Commander Zekthor stood on the bridge of the dreadnought subjugator, watching the blue-green planet rotate peacefully below. His crest flared with satisfaction. Intelligence suggested the humans were fragmented, constantly warring among themselves. They would fold quickly. "Deploy the collars," he ordered. Within hours, orbital stations released millions of neural devices across Earth's major population centers. The collars attached themselves to human necks with molecular precision, embedding neural interface tendrils directly into the brainstem. By the Krell's calculations, humanity would be pacified within a solar rotation. Zekthor received the first compliance reports with smug contentment. Humans stood docile in city squares, awaiting instructions. The collar technology had never failed. It suppressed aggression, amplified obedience, and created the perfect servile workforce. But the Krell had made one critical miscalculation. They had studied human warfare, human technology, human social structures. What they hadn't studied was human history. They didn't understand what happened when humanity was pushed into a corner. They didn't comprehend the evolutionary crucible that had forged mankind through ice ages, predators, plagues, and countless wars against their own kind. The collars were designed to suppress the civilized human mind, the layers of culture, law, and social conditioning that made humans functional members of society. What the Krell didn't realize was that beneath those layers lay something far older, something that had allowed humanity to climb to the top of Earth's food chain. Dr. Sarah Chen was the first to understand what was happening. She had been cataloging behavioral changes in collared subjects when she noticed the pattern. Heart rates weren't decreasing as predicted. They were spiking. Adrenaline levels were through the roof. Brain scans showed the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought and impulse control, was being suppressed. But the amygdala, the ancient brain structure responsible for primal responses, was lighting up like a supernova. "Oh God," she whispered, watching the readings. "They didn't turn off our aggression. They turned off the safety." Across Earth, the change began. In New York, a collared construction worker named Marcus Williams felt something snap inside his mind. The voice that usually told him to calm down, to think rationally, to follow the rules, it was gone. In its place was pure, crystalline rage and an overwhelming urge to survive. When Krell overseers approached to assign him to demolition duty, Marcus didn't comply. He attacked with his bare hands, moving with a speed and ferocity that shocked even him. The Krell's exoskeleton cracked under his assault. He didn't stop until it stopped moving. In Tokyo, a collared office worker named Yuki Tanaka found herself in a Krell processing center. The collar told her to obey, but her hindbrain screamed louder. When a Krell guard reached for her, instinct took over. She grabbed a metal support beam and swung with every ounce of strength her body could generate. The guard went down. She didn't feel horror at what she'd done. She felt alive. The pattern repeated across the globe. Millions of humans, freed from the psychological restraints of civilization, reverted to something the Krell had never encountered: apex predators with tool-using intelligence and pack-hunting instincts. Zekthor watched the reports flood in with growing horror. Humans were attacking Krell forces with improvised weapons, coordinating without language, moving with animal cunning. More disturbing, they were learning. Fast. "How are they resisting?" he demanded. The collar should have pacified them. His science officer's translator crackled with panic. "Commander, I've analyzed the neural patterns. The collars are working exactly as designed. They've suppressed higher cognitive functions. But humans, their baseline aggression wasn't in their higher brain. It was buried deeper. We've removed their inhibitions, not their capacity for violence." "Impossible. No species." "These humans evolved as pursuit predators, Commander. They hunted megafauna to extinction on their own world. They've been killing each other for thousands of years. We didn't enslave them. We unshackled them. On the ground, the human counterattack had become a nightmare. Collared humans fought with a savage efficiency that no Krell simulation had predicted. They used everything as weapons: rocks, glass, metal, fire. They learned Krell weak points within hours and exploited them mercilessly. They coordinated through pure instinct, moving in packs, ambushing patrols, and disappearing into urban terrain they knew intimately. Worse still, the uncollared humans, those who had escaped the initial deployment, began to weaponize the effect. Military commanders realized what the collars had done and started using them on volunteer special forces units. Soldiers with the collars became berserkers, superhuman fighters who felt no fear and showed no mercy. In Moscow, a collared Spetsnaz unit tore through a Krell garrison in 14 minutes. In Seoul, collared Marines cleared a landing zone using nothing but entrenching tools and their bare hands. The Krell, who had engineered their own species for thousands of years to be efficient and logical, couldn't comprehend enemies who embraced chaos and brutality so completely. Zekthor made the decision to retreat on the third day. By then, the Krell had lost 30% of their ground forces. The subjugator began pulling orbital assets, preparing for emergency jump. "We need to warn the Empire," Zekthor said. His crest wilted in defeat. "Mark Earth as forbidden space. These creatures, they're not a civilization to be conquered. They're a weapon waiting to be released." As the Krell fleet jumped away, Dr. Chen stood in a reclaimed research facility, removing collars from volunteers. Each removal brought visible relief as higher brain functions returned, as the civilized human mind reasserted control over the ancient killer beneath. "Did we win?" asked Marcus, rubbing his neck where the collar had been. Sarah looked at the data scrolling across her screen. Casualty reports, damage assessments, and most disturbingly, psychological profiles of the collared fighters. Many of them had enjoyed it. That primal state of pure survival instinct was addictive. Some were asking to keep the collars. "We survived," she said finally. "But we learned something about ourselves, something we can never forget." Marcus nodded, slowly remembering the savage clarity he'd felt, the absence of doubt or fear. They wanted to find the monster in us. "And they succeeded," Sarah agreed. "They just didn't realize we'd been keeping it caged for a reason." Above Earth, the Krell Empire added a new entry to their database. Species, 048, Homo sapiens. Status, apex predator. Threat level, extinction class. Recommendation, avoid at all costs. Humanity had survived its first contact with alien life. But the scars remained, and the question lingered. What would happen if they ever needed to release that monster again? And more terrifying still, would they be able to cage it once more? The stars awaited humanity's answer.